Welcome to my Art Nibbles art studio. Today we're going to be doing a super fun project with watercolors, painting water. I really enjoyed this piece. I think it's really relaxing and it teaches some great advanced techniques for watercolor. I'm excited to get started. I know you are too. So here we go, to the classroom.
Alright class, welcome to my art making space. So today we are going to be working on our water painting. We're using watercolors. You'll need some masking tape. You'll need a cup to put water in. You can have a little mixing tray, or you can use a plate, or a lot of times your watercolors will have a tray at the lid that you can use for mixing as well. You don't have to have the same kinds of watercolor as I do. Crayola watercolor paints will work just fine for this. And you'll need either white artist ink, which you can get at Hobby Lobby or other craft stores, or you can use white acrylic paint and just water it down to make it nice and thin. You'll need a pencil. Any kind of pencil will do. It can be a mechanical pencil or a regular wooden pencil. And you'll need two brushes. You want a medium-sized brush and a fine small tip brush. Yours don't have to look just like mine. You could use, this is kind of a flat brush, you could use a round brush if you want, or a very flat brush, just kind of this size roughly, doesn't really have to be exact. And your fine brush doesn't have to be quite that pointy. You can also use brushes that look kind of like this. So as long as you have a medium-sized one and a small brush, you'll be just great for this project. Alright, first thing that also you need paper. Don't forget your paper, you need something to paint on. So today I'm going to be using watercolor paper. I just cut it into this rectangle shape because I thought it would look nice for our project. But you can use any kind of size or shape you would like for your artwork. The same technique will work with any size and any shape. And I recommend a thicker paper. So watercolor paper is very thick. It's a heavier weight of paper. And if you have watercolor paper or Bristol paper works good, or maybe a cardstock, something that's going to be heavier. Watercolor is going to be the best for this, but if all you have is cardstock or Bristol paper or another kind of heavyweight paper, go ahead and use that. I recommend heavier paper over printer paper, which is very thin and it'll wrinkle up quite a bit with watercolor painting. So we've got our paper here. First thing you want to do is tape it down, because this will help keep it from wrinkling up when you get it nice and wet. So I do a little trick with my masking tape. Every time I pull a piece off, first I just fold a little bit of the end over like that, and that'll make it so much easier for me to take off later. So go ahead and tape your painting down. Alright, I've got my masking tape down. Maybe you want to run over it once with your fingers just to make sure it's really stuck down pretty good, because when we get it nice and wet, we want it to be stuck real good. So now you're ready to start painting. Grab your medium size brush and make sure it gets nice and wet with clean water, and pick one blue color. If you have two different options, like I actually have two different options in my kit. Pelican is the brand that I'm using if you're curious, but most Crayola watercolor kits are going to come with just one choice of blue, and that blue will be just fine for this. So go ahead and pick your blue. I'm going to pick this one. This is my favorite color here. And before we actually do any of that, we're just going to wet down our paper. Make sure the whole thing is nice and glossy. You don't want to have it so wet that there's like pools of water. You want to spread that out. You just want the whole thing to be wet. So if you kind of look to the side, put your head closer to the table, you can see where it's shiny. Wherever it's shiny, that means it's wet enough. If it's dry looking, go ahead and put more water and just spread it out. Now we're going to work kind of fast for this step because we want our paper to stay nice and wet. If you have watercolor paper, then this step will be a little easier because it stays wet longer. If you have thinner paper, it might be a little difficult, but go ahead and use any paper that you've got because you can really just use anything. As long as you're having fun and making art, then you're good. Pick your blue, get lots of water. I'm gonna put my water over here. And we're going to swirl our paintbrush in the watercolor paint for at least 6 seconds. So you can even count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Whenever you pick up paint, you always want to swirl in a nice circle like this. Don't just jab the paintbrush in there. Don't try to scoop it out if it's kind of goopy. Always just swirl really gentle. We want to be nice to our paint materials, nice to our paint, and nice to our paintbrush. This will keep your paintbrush nice and we'll treat it with respect. So take your paintbrush and start at the very top while it's still wet, and you can just go back and forth, move down. You see how I'm starting to run out of some paint, so I'm actually gonna come back and get some more, but I'm gonna do it for at least 6 seconds. 4, 5, 6. I got lots of paint on there now. I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna go a little faster because I don't want this to dry out on me. So I'm starting to run out of paint on my brush. What I'm going to do, instead of going back for more paint, I'm just going to get some water. So I'm going to get a ton of water on my brush and just touch it. Again, it's getting a little dry, so I'm going to get a lot of water and touch it and keep coming down. See how it's getting lighter and lighter because I'm not getting any more paint. If you need to, you can even cover it to make sure that you don't get any more paint, because what we want is for it to look like it gets lighter at the bottom and it's darker up top. So see how it's nice and dark up top, it gets lighter. That's exactly what we want. Now we can come back with another layer, get more paint, start at the top again. If it's still wet, you can come down, blend it all together. See how fast I'm going back and forth? You want to go nice and quick, otherwise your paper will dry on you and it'll be more difficult. All right. I think we've got a nice transition. It's nice and dark at the top, light at the bottom. Now we're going to mix a color, okay? You see I've got my blue that I've chosen, and I have some black. I'm going to use my little mixing palette over here. I'm going to get water on my brush, pick up some blue, a lot of blue. See, I'm swirling in a nice circle, not stabbing the paint really hard, being nice to my paintbrush. I'm going to pick an empty one of these spots over here and get some blue over there. Alright, I think I've got enough blue. Then I'm going to get a little bit of black. Now black is a very strong color, so you only want a little bit. You don't want a lot. And I'm going to mix that into my blue to make it a little bit of a darker blue. Just a little darker. I think I'm going to get a touch more black. Little bits at a time. And you can mix it in because you can always get a little more black if you decide you want it to be darker, but it's much easier to make the right color if you just do tiny bits at a time. Now I have a nice pretty dark blue. Now if your paper's already dry, then you might want to wet it down a little bit again, but my paper's still wet. I can see it's still shiny. I'm going to start at the top with this darker blue and just let it blend in. See how it kind of blends in by itself. I just want it to be a little darker up top. I'm going to wash my brush off. Now you can just get water again and blend that color right down. Or you could even get some of your other blue over here and blend that a little bit. So as long as it's looking dark on top and it gets a little lighter as you go down, then you have got it made. Now yours isn't going to look just like mine. Everybody's is going to look different. Everybody's is unique, and that's what makes art beautiful. So don't be concerned if yours doesn't look exactly like mine. And you know, watercolor takes practice. So just allow yourself to have fun, relax, and enjoy practicing how to do this. So we've got our a nice background faded gradation. So our next step is going to be to let this dry. Now you can allow it to just sit here. Maybe you want to go read a book for a little while, or watch some TV, or play a video game, or talk to somebody for just a few minutes and let this dry. Or you can do what I do, and I like to use a hair dryer to dry my paintings when I'm working on them in layers much faster. So that's what I'm going to do. We're back. So we have our nice dry paper. You're going to grab your pencil next. And yours isn't going to look just like mine. This part's super fun because it's really just drawing a wobbly line, okay? So I would even encourage you, you don't have to hold the pen right here for perfect drawing. If you hold it way back here, it's a little bit easier to loosen up a little bit. So I'm going to come kind of towards the top, not all the way, right about here, and I'm just going to draw a nice wobbly line. Now it might be a little hard to see on the camera, but you saw how I just went, didn't think about it too much. You want to think about this very little, okay? Just relax and let it happen. I'm going to draw a second line. I'm going to go down just a little bit, maybe about halfway. Now I'm going to do another, just like that. See how I went woo everywhere, okay? All the way across, nice and lumpy. And one more line. We're going to go all the way down here and go nice and curvy. Each line's going to look different. That's what makes it fun. You can put your pencil down, pick up your medium brush again. Okay. Go back to your blue color. Oh, yeah, I need more water on my brush here. And swirl in there for at least 6 seconds. We want it to be nice and dark. So if you need to, you can count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Underneath that first line, I want you to trace that line right underneath it, not above it, not on it, but underneath. Now, wash your brush off. And you're just going to gently pull some of that paint down. See how quickly I'm moving? Again, you want to go kind of quick. I'm going to get some more water. See, I'm not getting any more paint, just the water. I'm coming down to that second line. See that second wobbly line here? I just painted right down, so it's a little bit darker on top. And then because I didn't pick up any more paint and I just washed my brush off and got water and I pulled it down, that then made it nice and light at the bottom. We're going to do the same thing for this second line. So you're going to go and grab for about 6 seconds. Start beneath the line, right underneath the line. Trace underneath it. Now it doesn't have to be perfect, okay? See how I got a nice thick line there? It does not have to be perfect. I'm going to wash my brush off, get plenty of water, and pull some of that paint while it's still wet down. I'm going to maybe get some more water. See, I'm not getting any more paint, just water. I'm going to paint all the way down to that third line. Now you don't even have to touch it, and it doesn't have to be exact. It's just about there. See how it's nice and dark up here, and then it gets lighter down here? We're going to do the same thing again. Okay, so we did it for that third line. I did it with a nice dark color, and then washed off my brush and got more water. I'm gonna do the same thing at the top here. First, I'm just gonna get some dark paint, wash my brush out, and pull that down so it gets lighter before I hit that line. There we go. Now, if you still have some of your darker color that you made, you can use that, or you can make more. I'm gonna get some of my dark blue ready on my brush. And same thing, I'm just gonna do another layer. Right underneath that first line, another layer, but it'll be darker this time. And just blend it right down into the wet paint. If your paint is already 100% dry, then you might want to put some water on your paper before you grab your darker color. Same thing, I'm just gonna trace underneath that first line that I made and blend it in. You can maybe just get water, but if you don't have a lot on your brush, I actually can just blend it in, getting more for that third part. And now, going back to the very top, I'm gonna get some of that dark blue up there, pulling it down and letting it blend in. When it's all wet, it makes it nice and faded. You want it to be nice and wet. So if your paper's dry, you can maybe wet that area down first. Okay. Now, this does not have to look just like mine, doesn't have to look perfect. I got nice kind of splotchy areas and the paint kind of, fades into other different areas. All of that is really cool. We want that to happen. So if you've got that going on, awesome. Great job. Okay. For our next step, we also need this layer to be dry. So go ahead and dry your artwork. Either take some time, do something else for a little while, or dry it with a hairdryer. All right, now we've got a nice dry paper. We are ready to move on to the next step, which is super fun. I am pumped. We are gonna get our ink out. If you have ink, then you can just use that straight out of the bottle. Or if you're using acrylic paint, take maybe 1 part acrylic paint and 3 parts water, roughly. You just want to water it down so that it's nice and liquidy. You don't want it to be thick. I would say the consistency coming out of the tube is roughly pudding, kind of. It's like pudding. You want it to be more like hot cocoa, okay? And you only need a little bit, so just like 1 scoop of paint with your paintbrush is enough. Just a very little bit. I'm going to be using the ink today. I only need a tiny bit. And I'm just going to put it right on top of that dry paint right there. Okay. Now we get to move on to our little brush. So go ahead and grab your little brush and get your white ready. You don't need to add any water to this brush. Go ahead and just dip it straight in if you're using ink. If you're using acrylic paint, make sure it's watered down so it's nice and liquidy. Okay, so the first thing you'll do is, again, trace that line that you made before. Now it doesn't have to be perfectly traced. You're going to have some areas that have thicker lines and thinner lines. That is excellent. We want that to happen. You want the variation. If you press very lightly on your brush, you will get a much thinner line. If you press harder on your brush, you'll get a thicker line. So go ahead and use this opportunity to practice making some thick lines and some thin lines by pressing harder or pressing less. Now, this is the fun part. It's very interesting. I would say, think of it as making just a bunch of really wonky, flowy shapes. So I just decided to make this a shape. I'd say it's almost like an eyeball shape, or maybe like a wonky diamond or something like that, you're going to just make some of these shapes on top of your white line. You want to put it on top, not underneath, only on top of that white line you first traced. And you're going to have some big ones and some small ones. You want lots of variation, okay? Some really tiny ones, maybe a little lumpy, maybe some skinny ones, and then maybe some bigger ones. As long as you've got different sizes going on, you are going to be great at this. I'm going to go all the way across. Okay, so I think that looks good to me. On some of the top parts here, I might just have some flowy lines just kind of falling off of it, going up, because I don't want it to be too perfect. Now, you see how this shape has some little pointy edges on the inside? And same with this shape. See how pointy that is? I want to get some of those pointy edges a little bit rounder. So I'm just going to use my paint to make it a little rounder inside. Not so pointy. If you have a really thin brush, you'll probably have to do that and kind of round it up inside. If your brush isn't quite as thin as mine, it's probably already round then, and you don't really have to worry about it. And like I said, everybody's is going to be different. Your shapes don't have to be exactly mine. Just have fun with it. I just want to put them right on top. I wouldn't worry too much about the pointiness of the little ones, the little shapes. We want to maybe just focus on the big ones. All right. There we go. Now we're going to do the exact same thing for the second one. First thing you do is trace that line, that wonky line you first made with the pencil. And you can see how I'm going kind of off the page when I paint. I'm just painting right onto that masking tape, because when we take that masking tape off, we'll have a nice clean edge. And you want to paint all the way across, all the way. So we have a nice curvy line. On top of our curvy line, we're going to do the same thing. Maybe start with a nice big wonky shape right on top, not underneath, only on top of that white line. So go ahead and make different sizes all across. Don't overthink it. I didn't think about it. Okay, and now the same thing with these pointy insides. We'll maybe round them out. If you've got a really fine brush, you probably need to round them. If your brush is thicker, probably don't have to. If they don't look pointy to you, just leave them as they are. It's okay to just leave them alone. All right, and for the last one, you're going to do the exact same thing you did for the first two. So go right ahead. All right, finished with that step. Super fun. Great job. Next step, I enjoy quite a bit. You're going to pick up your medium brush. You can have a little water on there. Now you can choose if you have some extra left of the darker blue you made, or you can just use the straight blue, whichever one you prefer. Go ahead and pick up a little bit of that, and we're just going to splatter this on our page. Very lightly tap your brush like this. Make sure your paintbrush isn't too close to your painting, because you might smack it into your painting. Just hold it up a little bit and just tap it with your finger, just like that. You're going to get some nice splatters. Now we don't need too many. Wash your brush off and pick up a little bit of the white now. And just right next to kind of where you added the other way, do the same thing. Just a little bit. Don't need too much. Otherwise you'll cover up all the hard work you just did. Just have fun. Nice. And there you go. Great job. Next step is to allow this to dry. Go ahead and pick your favorite drying method. All right, your artwork should be nice and dry. We have 2 more steps left before we're finished. Before anything else, let's sign our artwork. Now you can choose to sign it with your pencil, or if you have a pen, you can sign it with that. Or if you really want to try, you can sign it with paint and your small paintbrush, but I think it's a little hard to do that, so I actually prefer to just do it with a pencil or with a little pen. And I like to write nice and small in the corner, so I have my name proudly shown on my artwork, just what I'd like to see on yours. Okay, last thing we're gonna do is take off our masking tape. Now there is a trick to this, okay? I suggest, if you do have a blow dryer, to use that on the tape because it helps loosen it up and it'll be easier to take it off of your artwork without your artwork tearing. And you also want to pull away from your artwork when you are taking this off. So I'll show you. I'm going to lift it up. See how I made these little tabs first? Much easier to take off. I'm going to pull down away from my artwork. Away. I'm not going to pull straight across because that could tear it. All the way down. Nice and slow. If you go fast, you might tear your artwork. So go nice and slow. I'm going to lift it from the tab and pull to the right now. Pulling to the right away from my artwork, because if I just pull straight up, I might tear the artwork, and I don't want to do that. I worked really hard on this. Nice and slow. Don't go fast. Be patient. Same thing all around. And there we have it. Our water painting. How cool is that? I can't wait to see your guys' artwork. You did such a great job, and I hope that you'll be posting the artwork that you made in my class on social media. And if you do, please tag me in your artwork so I can check out what you did. You can tag me on Facebook or Instagram at Kathleen Rolling. I look forward to seeing it. I hope you guys had fun. Keep practicing. You guys did a great job. I'll see you next time.